BlackRock CEO Larry Fink just casually dropped a bombshell. Sovereign funds are quietly stacking Bitcoin, buying the dip as prices cool off. Well, at the same event, Larry also reminisced about how wrong about Bitcoin he was. And he's not alone. The second largest asset manager has also bent the knee. Vanguard, the fortress of traditional finance, finally greenlit Bitcoin ETFs. Not to be outdone, we've got more financial players scrambling to get into Bitcoin, including America's second largest bank. So, to kick things off today, we're going to dive into markets with an update from none other than friend of the show, Joe Consorti. Joe is here to break down everything and where Bitcoin is headed next. I am Nathan with the BTC Sessions, and this is your weekly session. All right, let me go ahead and bring in my co-host with the most, Mr. Gary Mahmood. Gary, how are you doing today?
Very well. How you doing, sweetie?
I'm doing wonderful, thank you. And let's bring in special guest and friend of the show, Joe Consorti. Joe, it's good to see you as always.
Good to see you guys as well. Thank you so much for having me on.
No, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. To kick things off, I did just want to play this clip that we have here from Larry Fink. I'll go ahead and start this up.
We're seeing more and more legitimate long-only investors investing in it. There was an article about a foundation, endowment just bought a lot of IBIT. But I can tell you there are a number of sovereign funds that are standing by. They're adding incrementally at 120, at 100. I know they bought more in the 80s. Right. That's fine. And they're establishing a longer position. And you own it over years. This is not a trade. You own it for a purpose. We're seeing more.
All right, so Joe, we've got Larry Fink talking about sovereigns coming in, which does actually kind of fit with the framework that I had, that there were big institutional players like slowly accumulating that was eating up demand over the year. But what are you currently seeing in markets? What's got your attention, my friend?
Absolutely. Well, it is big news. I mean, we already know Abu Dhabi's sovereign wealth fund has been purchasing Bitcoin for some time. I think last year in MENA, I was on stage, or at least I was on the desk when they announced that. So that was really cool. So they've been doing that for about the last year. You also have Luxembourg sovereign wealth fund, who's been quietly accumulating BTC. You have the Czech central bank, who has purchased a small amount of Bitcoin, but nevertheless, it's no question that Bitcoin has become institutionalized, not only by U.S. Investment players, but also investment players abroad with these massive balance sheets. And, before we were on air, Gary, you mentioned you saw my video that I did about Bank of America now allowing its wealth managers to actively recommend Bitcoin. A number of bullish developments, even as sentiment is kind of in the gutter. Look, like this happens constantly with Bitcoin. This is the third 30% drawdown that we've seen over the last year and a half to 2 years. And so, I'd say Bitcoiners have kind of become complacent, or they become entitled, if you will. They want the price to go up forever without these corrections, but quietly in the background, these developments are happening. The groundwork is being laid for Bitcoin to have a much larger structural bid underneath it. Vanguard, obviously, they also announced some really, really bullish news. They're going to start offering the Bitcoin ETFs to their clients. They have $4 trillion or $11 trillion in AUM across all of their clients. Bank of America has $4.6 trillion in AUM across its wealth management platforms. JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley are also now offering structured IBIT notes to investors who want some kind of structured note, some kind of fixed income, or not fixed income, but some kind of fixed income product. And so all of these really, really bullish developments are happening in the background as Bitcoin's price is kind of stalled out alongside other assets. And I can't help but be bullish heading into the rest of December, but also 2026 at large.
That's wonderful. And I completely agree. There seems to be like so much of a setup for next year. I'm curious if there's anything specific to either other macro trends or anything that you're seeing on chain or anything in that fancy Bloomberg terminal. Because we had quite a little bit of price action over the last week or so. We had the wonderful drawdown, but we're already back up into the 90s. And it seems like, I don't know if that was just a blip or if there's anything else that is making sense of this for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I got a couple of charts here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I want to zoom out and kind of showcase the balance sheet situation here. So one major thing that's been in Bitcoin's corner is that obviously the Larry Finks of the world, the Jamie Dimons of the world have now come around from avid, avowed detractors of Bitcoin to being in Bitcoin's corner. But another narrative that had been plaguing Bitcoin for a very long time is that it's this asset that only appreciates because of zero interest rate policy and an expanding balance sheet. Well, the reality is that as the Fed has tightened monetary policy, both by reducing its balance sheet and raising its policy rates, Bitcoin managed to rise from $18,000 to $126,000. Obviously, it's corrected here, but Bitcoin is a fundamentally different asset today as a result of the people who are buying it. So you can see here, this in blue is the Fed funds rate. This is the upper bound. That's its main policy rates that guides the level of interest rates in the US economy. And here's the Fed's balance sheet, so the aggregate level of assets that it's holding. And you can see here during this period where it sucked this liquidity out of the system by reducing the amount of assets that it held on its balance sheet and raised the policy rate, thereby tightening credit conditions, Bitcoin managed to explode higher. And so now the reason this is extremely bullish is because Bitcoin managed to do all of this major last move that I just discussed from 18K to 126K in this environment of tightening monetary policy. And now we're moving into an environment where monetary policy is going to be loosening and loosening rapidly. You can see here when the Fed cut rates, it started cutting rates pretty aggressively back in last September. Bitcoin obviously loved that quite a bit. Now we're entering into a regime where bank reserves are becoming scarce. And so the talk of the town is that the Fed is going to resume QE in order to inject banks afresh with fresh liquidity. And so Bitcoin, chances are it's going to do even better in that environment, right? We've seen that it explodes when there is ZERP, when there is QE, and whatever the Fed calls it, whatever measure that they take in order to make bank reserves more abundant, we know the net effect. It's going to increase risk-taking behavior. It's going to increase liquidity in the market. And Bitcoin has shown time and again that it is the apex predator, if you will, as far as liquidity is concerned. And so I can't help but be bullish. You pair that with the seasonality of December. I promise I'll stop talking in a second. The seasonality of December. December tends to be the strongest month for the S&P 500. 79% of the time, dating back 100 years, December is a green month. Now, how green that is depends on the year, obviously. But Bitcoin is now flat on the year. December is a structurally bullish month for risk assets at large. And so, again, to sound like a broken record, I just can't help but be bullish in this environment.
No, that's wonderful. Can you break down for me why is it that December has that seasonality of actually being bullish? I never looked at the data in particular. I would have assumed it kind of went the other direction. People are going on holidays, they're getting away from their desks, they're not paying attention. I'd figure that market activity would kind of quiet down. We might even see it drift down a little bit going into the end of the year.
Yeah, so it has to do a lot with year-end rebalancing, but more so the dynamic that you're talking about where traders step away from the desk and they're not as active, that actually happens during the summer.
Yeah.
And so we saw that with the S&P 500 this summer, but more so we saw it with Bitcoin. We've actually seen it with Bitcoin for the last 3 summers. You can see here during the middle of 2023, Bitcoin stalled out before rocketing higher into Q4. In 2024, Bitcoin stalled out. Chop solidation was the term that was coined and went around, and then it rocketed higher into December. And then I believe the same dynamic is at play here, right? We saw in 2025, again, a boring, long, extended consolidation period. Ultimately for me, it boils down to Bitcoin is an absolutely scarce monetary asset. The Fed is going to be printing money like crazy, whatever they end up calling it. And so Bitcoin is poised to rip higher into December. It actually is the opposite effect moving into December. Consumer spending estimates surge. Heading into the holiday season, traders love to be positioned for that. And you pair that with the macro environment we're moving into. Trump has done everything but announcing Kevin Hassett as the next Fed chair. Kevin Hassett is obviously a major dove. He wants to slash interest rates by a massive degree. And he was a former Coinbase advisor, right? So not only do we have a dove who's going to be the next Fed chair, chances are Trump's probably going to nominate him, but he also was somebody who is extremely involved in the Bitcoin and quote unquote crypto industry writ large. So you put all of these things together, and it's the outlook for Bitcoin is looking extremely good.
That's wonderful. And it's funny how bad news is good news in terms of like the bank reserves and let's say insufficient liquidity that they're going to have to inject and maybe move to QE. I'm curious if you have any thoughts on what might be the cause of that or what might trigger a QE to be back on the table. Because again, I don't necessarily have the best view of this, but my instincts would be something along the lines of that if the Fed has to come in and inject liquidity through QE or issue more bank reserves, it's because banks aren't lending to each other. So there's higher perceived risk, or there's something that's basically causing everybody to kind of batten down the hatches. But I'm curious if you have thoughts on that or what I might be missing.
You hit the nail on the head. So effectively, the rate at which banks are willing to lend to one another on an overnight basis, or SOFR, that has blown out recently. So that has increased by quite a bit over the last several weeks. There was a period during November where it spiked very quickly and a lot of people were scared. It died down a little bit, but now it's ramping back up again. And so that indicates there's a lot of stress in the interbank liquidity market, and banks have a lower likelihood of being able to lend to each other. They raise the rate at which they're willing to lend funds to each other, and so spending activity slows because people can't get credit as easily, and that's what forces the Fed to come in and inject liquidity in order to get credit conditions loosened again, so banks begin lending to one another. Because as you know, we live in a credit-based system, right? Yeah. If credit isn't being extended, if money isn't being lent into existence by the banks, then the entire system slows to a halt. And so really the onus is on the Fed here to make sure that they stave off any kind of recession or any kind of downturn. And we've seen time and again that any time the system is threatened in this way, the Fed is very quick to react. So the last time bank reserves reached this level, of scarcity, the Fed stepped in quite quickly in order to amend that. You can see here they accelerated the rate at which they were allowing their balance sheet to run off. And prior to that, when we saw a spike in the secured overnight funding rate in 2019, when there was a cash shortage in the repo market, the Fed also stepped in very quickly in order to loosen credit conditions once more. And so it's kind of this tried and true playbook that gets trotted out. The Fed is usually too late to the party when it comes to these things. It waits until the very last moment when things seem to be about to really fall for the worse, and then it reacts. And so we're coming up upon that moment now. The question for me is whether or not we see one last puke in Bitcoin and other risk assets before that happens. But Jerome Powell being a relatively proactive Fed chair, I don't think we'll see that. And one of the reasons I think Bitcoin has reacted so sharply over the last couple of days is because it's smelling this forthcoming activity of the Fed intervening and providing support in the interbank market.
Yeah, something's going to show up and the Fed's going to have to react, because it's always rear-facing data. They're always a little bit late to the party, no matter who's in charge. Because again, they're waiting on that information to come in. So that would make sense to me. That it seemed like it was quite the contrast between gold and Bitcoin. Is essentially one's kind of like the long. It almost seemed like gold was laying out what's going to happen, and Bitcoin was almost a more short-term reaction of what's going to happen to trigger what's going to happen that gold is picking up on. Even like additionally, I saw that we had Charles Schwab was saying that they're going to be offering Bitcoin as well too. So we're seeing more CEOs stepping in, and then we also had the Russian state-owned bank giant VTB just said they recommend a 7% allocation to Bitcoin. So we're seeing more from like the sovereign side and the institution setting up that they want to be there. So Gary, I'm curious if you have any questions here for Joe. What's top of mind for you?
I'm just grateful for you to be here, Joe. I feel like having you here is just good therapy for all of our listeners, because I feel like most of the people listening to this show sort of know the underlying argument to Bitcoin already. And we see it drop down and we see it crab walk. And sometimes we just need to be told, hey, everything's okay. These big players are coming in. I mean, personally, from an ANCAP perspective, I think Nathan shares my view. I'd rather they didn't. I'd rather this be some anarcho thing where we eventually get rid of the state, but that's not going to happen. But if they're not going to follow, and they're not going to eventually buy in, then the entire premise of why I would own Bitcoin, there must be something wrong with it, because these guys are way smarter than me. They have to see where this is inevitably leading, how, the nothing stops this train. So it just seems like, all right, we're getting there. It's going to happen. It's just inevitable, the ups and downs along the way. So I know so much I have a question. I'm just grateful to have you here so you can offer the insights that I am not smart enough to do.
Yeah, well, I mean, the one component of it is that they do see the fiscal problem going out of control, and they think that nothing stops this train argument. But the other thing is that for the banks in particular, it is so profitable for them to offer these products. With IBIT in particular, it's been BlackRock's most profitable their most profitable offering rather in history. And so obviously there's a little bit of greed tied into why they're offering these things. But when you see state-owned banks that don't necessarily have an interest in advising their clients on these things because they don't have a particular product to offer and get fees for, it is very telling. And so I certainly do agree with you. It seems like the major players are now waking up to this reality. And it's one of the reasons why I'm kind of leaning the direction that eventually we will get a more formalized strategic Bitcoin reserve. At some point, the U.S. has to come to terms with the fiscal realities that it's facing and decide to kind of hedge itself against itself, which is one of the reasons that I'm more bullish on formal Bitcoin reserve legislation than maybe I have been previously. Because this entire year, I think that one of the prevailing themes in markets this whole year has been that, we had this rocket scientist, smartest guy in the world, Elon Musk, come into the government. They basically gave him free reign to cut as much waste as he possibly could. And he wasn't able to. He wasn't able to make really a dent in our spending. And so that's kind of a recognition for me that, like, okay, that was probably our final chance at stopping this train, or at least slowing this train. But now there's been this collective realization across markets that no, this is something that's never going to slow down, and you're going to see risk-taking behavior only increase as a result of that.
No, completely agree. We have from Senator Cynthia Lummis, big things coming for Franklin. Franklin buys Bitcoin and finds financial freedom, which I don't know where this Franklin meme necessarily started, but it's nice to see you're still out there, still working on it. And it's interesting. So I guess at this point in time, I'd kind of written off that like the Bitcoin strategic reserve was really going to happen, but you still think that those probabilities are maybe even increasing right now, that they actually might move forward with this?
I have a feeling. I think legislation would be passed, but I do think that it's much. Think about it this way, right? If you are the government and you have the ability to accumulate Bitcoin by stealing it from people, versus purchasing it using, treasury money that you get from treasuries, chances are
Which you were
going
also
to,
stealing from people.
Yeah,
Continue.
exactly. Chances are you're going to choose the stealing from people option, right? I mean, the good thing to do, like with the Chinese pig farming operation, and they see something like 180,000 Bitcoin or something like that, almost doubling the amount of Bitcoin that the U.S. formally holds. You would think that the next logical step would be to try to figure out who owned that Bitcoin and give it back to them. But that's an extremely complex operation. It's much easier to kind of push it underneath the rug and then put it as part of the strategic Bitcoin reserve. So, in the decision-making matrix as a government employee, as somebody working in DC, it makes a lot more sense from a cost perspective to just keep that Bitcoin on the books and then call that your strategic Bitcoin reserve, because you achieve the exact same outcome with, without having to spend basically any money on it.
It almost seems like it would be worthwhile to accumulate it in that sense, but not label it till later on, just to kind of have that first mover advantage as much as possible. Like, just keep accumulating it, but have it on the balance sheet as something different. It's just held for the time being, and then relabeling it as the strategic Bitcoin reserve, so that anybody is else going to try to follow suit, you're already ahead of them without necessarily giving away the full game plan.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I mean, obviously the United States is currently the leader as far as sovereign Bitcoin holdings go. But if one thing's true about the United States is that we want to extend our lead as far as possible. And, now we have, it previously was more neck and neck in China, neck and neck with China. We had like 180,000 Bitcoin. They had, something like 140 or 150. Now we're more than double the amount that they hold if you count the Bitcoin that was recently seized back in October. So yeah, no, it's all sunshine and roses as far as Bitcoin is concerned. And I would say for anybody watching in the audience, like when you see the biggest banks in the United States and also the biggest banks in the world, I hadn't heard about the Russian bank recommending a 7% allocation to Bitcoin. These are the biggest financial players. They have way more data than you. They have a lot more money than you. And they're also infinitely more greedy than you. And so chances are they wouldn't be recommending these things. They wouldn't be making these changes if they didn't believe in this asset class and they didn't want to make money from it, right? So even though the incentive structure behind why they're saying these things is a bit skewed because obviously they want to make money, it's a signal that everybody should pay attention to.
Can I just say about the Russian bank? Like, I just feel so cool that we knew something that Joe didn't. I'm just gonna put that there.
We snuck one past him. It didn't show up on the Bloomberg terminal. But to that point, like, everybody eventually bends the knee. Like, I'm not going to go through it right now, but there's a clip here from that same event, I believe, with Larry Fink talking about how he was wrong about Bitcoin. And then again, just a reminder from earlier in the show as well. We had Vanguard CEO Tim Buckley says Bitcoin is too volatile and is not a store of value. And they blocked it for the longest time. That's why them bending the knee was such a pivot, and it took ousting Tim for that to necessarily happen. I think we'll see more of this, Joe.
Another note there with as far as Tim Buckley is concerned, it's kind of funny because he said, I believe the exact quote was, as long as I am the CEO of Vanguard, there won't be a Bitcoin product that we offer. The moment that he is not the CEO, within a couple of months, they offer a Bitcoin product, right? So it's pretty ironic. And over a long enough time horizon, everybody comes to Bitcoin. Everybody realizes that it's a strategic necessity. It's just a function of education and then how desperate you become. And if we're talking about banks, they're always desperate for more cash. And so them offering these things it doesn't surprise me whatsoever.
I completely agree. Joe, that was fantastic. Thank you so much, my friend. Tell everybody where they can find you. They can go and check out your stuff.
Absolutely. If you guys are watching on YouTube right now, you can just search up Joe Consorti. I believe I'm the only Consorti in the Bitcoin space. Thank goodness, even though I have a pretty generic first name. You could also search me up on X. If you're watching on X, give me a follow over there. And yeah, that's where you'll find my work.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, my friend. We are going to take a brief break for show sponsors. If you're enjoying the content, if you're happy that Joe showed up here, please do hit that like button. It really does help out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and you haven't checked it out before, and leave a comment because you can tell, Gary, how beautiful his mustache is. When we get back in, we've got some more market bear news that would probably relate to why the Fed is going to be cutting and having to react, as well as some UBI rolling out. So don't go anywhere. We will be right back with you.
Bitcoin Well is the best place to be buying and selling Bitcoin in Canada and the US. And now with Bitcoin Well Infinite, it's also the best place to be making large buys at their OTC desk of over $50,000. Their white glove service gives you fast transactions, no slippage, and the lowest fees. You can scan the QR code on the screen or simply head to bitcoinwell.com/BTC Sessions to sign up today. And you can share your own personalized referral link to earn commissions. CoinKite has been in the game for years, creating hands down the best and most secure hardware when it comes to securing your Bitcoin. The Cold Card Q is an absolute powerhouse and my daily driver, and it's ideal for newcomers and advanced users alike. The Tap Signer gives you a low-cost, user-friendly option for those just getting started or for convenience when traveling. You can head to coinkite.com and use code BTC Sessions for discounts, or simply scan the QR code on the screen to get started right away. DEBIFI is the best and easiest way to borrow against your Bitcoin in a non-custodial way. Funds are held in a multisig escrow where you hold a key, and the platform allows for excellent hardware like the Cold Card Mark IV and the Q. You have access to flexible conditions, the best rates, and institutional-grade liquidity. If you're looking to make use of your capital, don't sell your Bitcoin, borrow against it. You can head over to debify.com to check them out, or simply scan the QR code on the screen.
All right. We are back in. Again, if you're enjoying the content, please do hit that like button. Gary, I don't know about you, man, but I actually am feeling pretty bullish, although not maybe so much in the short term. I just have this idea in my head that the most interesting thing is the one that will always play out. And so if everyone thought that this was going to be a green year, for it to be down just a little bit at the end and then start moving up in the spring would just fit perfectly, I think, with getting the tourists out of here, the people that don't necessarily understand what they held. It's the Bitcoiners and the institutions apparently that are stacking right now. I'm just curious your initial thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, that could be the case. I think if there's one thing Bitcoin always teaches us is that whatever our expectations are, they're wrong, at least in the short to medium term. I think we were talking earlier. I feel like I was the biggest bear of all of BTC Sessions and Bitcoin Mentor. And even I was saying, oh, yeah, we're at minimum like 150 by the end of the year, probably close to 180 maybe. And I was dead wrong about that. So what do I know? I just have a mustache. I don't know what I'm talking about.
It's a powerful mustache. But what Joe was saying is, yeah, I do think there are some signs and stress in the U.S. markets and global markets in general. And a few things we want to highlight and point out here. One is we had that interview with Larry Fink was with Brian Armstrong from Coinbase. And just in Coinbase to fund basic income pilot that will send $12,000 in crypto, probably USDC, to some New Yorkers. Because I'm sure New Yorkers are the ones that absolutely need a $12,000 handout. This sounds to me like UBI, Gary, like we're doing a little bit of a test of UBI in your neck of the woods. And doesn't that scream economic confidence to you?
Oh, very much so. When everything's going well, you definitely need just perpetual handouts from the state, i.e. other taxpayers. That's usually, everything's going smoothly then. Whatever. I don't know how inevitable is this. I keep hearing from people that this is all just inevitable. Like with AI, it's inevitable. I don't, not to go off on a tangent. I don't even know if I buy that, because when horses were going away, like all the blacksmith jobs are going away and nobody's going to be employed anymore. But technology shifts, jobs shift. I think there's always going to be a need for human beings doing something. But I don't know. Maybe this is the time that there's no more jobs left. I don't know.
Oh, dude, I am right there with you in the sense that AI is not taking away jobs writ large. Like there won't be any jobs. There'll be a lot of jobs that aren't necessary anymore, right? Like you're not gonna need a farrier to come and do horseshoes, but it's gonna open up a wealth of entrepreneurial spirit and creative and intellectual power that's currently trapped at things like, just what do you say? Like if you're like a distribution manager, someone who's rear facing in terms of data and just figuring out where the inventory to go, like that's gone. But that doesn't mean you have no job. That means you're freed up to do something else that offers a good or service to humanity. I'm right there with you. The UBI, I think, is 100% coming down the pipe as a last ditch effort to save a dying fiat economy and to keep people on fiat, right? It's that we're going to give you USD so you can meet your basic needs so that you continue to use it. It's the equivalent of like a shit coin airdrop, because if they didn't do that, no one would touch the stuff anymore. I don't think it's going to be as a result of AI. I think you're right. Like the Industrial Revolution, we're just going to have all these labor-saving devices. Well, we go and we put our labor elsewhere. We just do other things, right? Could be return to arts. Could be things like we're doing right now. Who knows what new jobs will come up in that environment where demand and people have more wealth and more free time because of AI. Who knows? Maybe they want more art. They want more shows. Maybe it's a return to culture instead of two parents just grinding away. Maybe we just go back to a one-parent household where you can have somebody actually raising the fucking kids instead of having to have to dump them in order to survive. Weird random tangent, but I did want to get that in there. But UBI from Coinbase, this is going to happen. And what sucks is that I'm pretty sure like every time this has been tried out, they've trotted the UBI out. It's always failed. It's ridiculous to think that you can print currency units and give it to people and somehow that's going to make things worse. That prices won't just immediately adjust to, right? It's not a scarcity of money. It's a scarcity of stuff.
Yeah, there's that great meme. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It was from like 12 years ago where there was somebody in like 6 pictures and somebody's like, oh man, popcorn at the movies is $8, but I only have $5. And you see like the Fed chair, don't worry, everybody should have popcorn. I'll print the money for you. And the guy's like, thanks. And suddenly the popcorn is now $14. Like, oh, okay. It was like, I'll give you the $5, which still didn't get you to the point, but you get the idea. I mean, it's basic econ. We know what's going to happen. You flood the market with money, prices go up. This is basic stuff, man. But we're going to do it. It seems.
Another signpost, another sign of the times. Continue with that. Why might people need UBI? Well, ADP highlights not looking so great. We had ADP private payroll at minus 32,000, expected plus 10 came in at 47. And don't forget, Gary, we reported on it last week. I think we even touched on it a little bit the week before. They didn't even put out the October employment numbers. At first, they're like, okay, we're going to put out the October employment report, but it's not going to have the unemployment numbers, which just seems absolutely ridiculous. I'm not sure why we're doing that, but sure, that was the idea. And then they went, nope, never mind. Nothing from October is coming out. Excuse is the shutdown, but they absolutely could release those figures if they want to do. I'm sure they could even just give us an estimate real quick. They are really trying to sweep the October employment numbers under the rug. I'm guessing that they're hoping it's just a one-off, or that it's going to bounce back here quick, or it's not reflective of the broader economy. But of course, we don't have access to those numbers. No, we don't have access to numbers, but you can bet damn sure the administration and the Federal Reserve at least have some idea of what the employment situation is looking like. And don't forget, they got that dual mandate, right? It's the stable prices and stable employment. There's also the third mandate of we can't let rich people's stocks go down. Don't forget that one as well. So just quickly highlighting some of the information we saw here. Manufacturing, minus 18,000. Professional business services, minus 26,000. Also in the Northeast region, would that include New York? Minus 100,000. And small establishments, minus 120,000. So employment data, not looking good. All this would set up, again, for like continued rate cuts, QE back on the table. I know they're already talking about stimulus checks. We have like the 50-year mortgages. You and I recorded a fun podcast this week talking about that. Like, just absolutely ridiculous. It's not looking good. Looking at the change here, we have the non-farm payroll up until September. But if you notice, that spike doesn't really continue at all because they didn't release the data, and now we're sitting here in the negative. We have this trend down since about September of last year. Not looking good in terms of U.S. employment. Continuing with that thought a little bit as well, too, we had another article here from Zero Hedge I just want to share quickly. Stock, bonds, bullion, and Bitcoin bid as bad data lifts rate cut odds. From weak industrial capacity utilization, ISM data, ugly jobs data, including the biggest manufacturing job losses since COVID, and a major small business jobs losses with the ADP. Again, everything is setting up that things are not looking good, which would make sense, right? I still stand by, like, we haven't paid the price for COVID. Like, all the shenanigans, the money printing, the locking down the economy, all the cost of that, they tried desperately to sweep under the rug, and that bill is still coming due.
Oh, yeah.
And go for it.
No, it's just a whole ton of malinvestment. You never cleared out the malinvestment. And that's every time we keep saying that the Fed or whatever needs to prop up the economy and not let a quote unquote recession happen. Well, a recession is clearing out the malinvestment. So what you're saying is we need to prop up and continue making sure people can invest their money poorly. Like, okay, cool, great.
Yeah, 100%. And the market agrees with us. It agrees with Joe as well, too, with that we've got a rate cut coming. Quickly popping over to CME to see what our Fed watch is telling us. It is currently at 87% of we're getting a cut in December. Remember, the Fed is rear-facing. They are reactionary. If they are cutting, it's because they see that there is problems, and we are getting a litany of problems in the space. So I think you can pretty much timestamp that one. It's December 10th. We're coming up here pretty quick. I don't think we're going to see a major change in the odds of a rate cut, and they're just going to follow it. If the Fed went against this, that would be quite shocking. I think they're just going to follow suit with whatever basically the futures market is predicting.
Whatever.
Gary agrees.
Whether they do or whether they don't, this is all inevitable. So, okay, let's say they don't cut this time. Maybe they don't cut next time. They're going to have to cut the time after and the time after that. There's no other way to get around this. They need the printing press. It's just math, guys. So they can hold it off a little longer, do it a little faster. If you're on a 5-year time horizon with your Bitcoin, this is all inevitable. Just chill out.
100%. There's a nice lady who always said nothing stops this train, and nothing does stop this train. Ultimately, because like the thing we were talking about, even with the lack of liquidity, because banks are basically perceiving higher risk and there's reduced lending or less favorable terms from lending to one another. You and I have gone down this rabbit hole that, like, it's a debt-based system. You need to have lending to create currency units to satisfy the existing debt out there. It's just a Ponzi on top of a Ponzi on top of a Ponzi, which is why we Bitcoin, which is why they're going to have to inject more Ponzi money. And ultimately, the Bitcoin is that liquidity sponge. It is that global liquidity magnet that's going to pull it to it. It feels very it almost feels like a little bit reminiscent of me of like 2021. Like we're setting up, like we had the Bitcoin crash down. If you remember when we dropped down to like the 80s there, the sentiment was off the charts in terms of people being unbelievably bearish, the fear and greed index, the short-term cost,
You mean
short-term holders cost basis.
just this past year, you mean over the
Like
summer?
just this like past month.
Oh,
Like when
okay.
we dropped down here in terms
Okay.
of sentiment and on-chain indicators, it looked like we were just getting dragged through the mud. Like it looked terrible. It was worse in terms of as the short-term holders cost basis than it was even during COVID crash, right?
Mm.
Again, it's only like 80s guys, like, but it really felt terrible at this time. But this feels reminiscent of the setup from 2021 for me. I'm not saying it's the exact same or it's going to play out that way, but like we had the crash down, everyone's freaking out, and 6 months later, because of basically fiscal spending from the government and quantitative easing and lowering interest rates, Bitcoin was just rocketing off to the races. And I feel like we're setting up for the same thing, that we had this pullback here. Everyone's freaking out. If you don't know what you have, you're getting out of it because you don't understand Bitcoin yet, which again, keep learning, learn the tools, make sure you're self-custodying. And then in the next 6 months, we were just back to like the previous levels and just rocketing up to 60K from there. So feels like a fun setup. But speaking of battening down the hatches and taking some weird turns in terms of safety here, I want to flag this one because I thought it was interesting. Strategy sets up 1.4 billion cash reserves. Gary, cash reserves.
I'm
Bitcoin
glad to be called
stashed.
Larry. Larry Laparte's great. So
He's
call
a
me Larry
wonderful
all you
human
want.
being. I'll call you Larry. I'll call you whatever I like, sweetie.
Appreciate it.
Lifts Bitcoin stash, reference to your mustache, to 650,000. We had Strategy on Monday announced the establishment of a US dollar reserve funded through the proceeds of the sale of a Class A common stock under its all the marketing offering program. Quote, Strategy's current intention is to maintain USD reserves in amount sufficient to fund at least 12 months of its dividends, and Strategy intends to strengthen the USD reserves over time with a goal of ultimately covering 24 months or more of its dividends, the company said. Alongside the launch, Strategy disclosed an additional purchase of 130 Bitcoin for 11.7 million, bringing the total holdings to a symbolic 650,000 BTC, acquired for $48.38 billion. This one felt really weird to me. And it felt very off-brand, like almost as close to selling Bitcoin without selling Bitcoin as you could. I have some thoughts on it before I dive into what I think might be going on here. What is your initial take, Gary?
Well, I think your thoughts, we discussed this earlier, are really interesting because I didn't think of it from your perspective. My initial thought was they're just trying to have a little bit of insurance in terms of cash instead of keeping everything in Bitcoin, because if there does come a time in short to medium term, like we said, I can't predict the price. There are factors way beyond global long-term macro that impact Bitcoin price from month to month or even year to year. And if there is a downturn and they're in a position where they're forced to sell, man, the PR in that is awful. Like that gets rid of the entire strategy project. Like, oh, you had to sell your Bitcoin. I thought this is something you're never supposed to sell. And then where do they go from there? So I thought this is just a little insurance, but maybe my guess is wrong. You had a much more interesting take, I think.
I think you make a very good point, and that likely is the case, or at least a large contributing factor of that. The risk of having to sell Bitcoin in order to like meet these dividends or meet some sort of operating costs, I think the perception from the market would be catastrophic, and so it's likely what they're setting up. I think it also might be related to perceived credit risk and their ability to get additional dollars as well. So the first thing that jumped to mind here, and again, it's just speculation. I can't verify if this is necessarily true, but with what happened like recently with both with MicroStrategy and with Tether, where Tether's got more gold and Bitcoin reserves than currently like outstanding debt for Tether stablecoins, and yet they're perceived as like higher risk in the market. And so my thought was like, okay, maybe this is stacking up USD on the balance sheet to improve their credit risk from a like the lending market's perspective, to basically be like, if the lending markets are viewing Bitcoin as a not necessarily safe strategic reserve, that this is a way of having cash on hand to hopefully still be able to borrow money at really favorable interest rates in order to meet debt obligations or buy more Bitcoin. It really felt like this was a setup for like the bond and credit market, that they were trying to strengthen themselves, especially with what happened in the last couple of weeks, and improve kind of their credit rating. Because I mean, from a philosophical and like a brand perspective, it would make sense. Like, and this is maybe just me because I'm a Bitcoiner and I'm all in on Bitcoin. It's like, if you need to have access to quick capital and you're stacking more cash, why not basically have like the Bitcoin long-term savings and the Bitcoin spending account, right? That would be very much on brand. I think it would be a great PR move to basically come out and say, we are fully at MicroStrategy on a Bitcoin standard. We have the reserves and the pile that we're setting up here, but our operating capital, we're going to roll that into Bitcoin as well too, and sell out what we need along the way to actually live on a Bitcoin standard, have everything in on a Bitcoin standard. There's no reason you couldn't have even those as like two different accounting basically setups. Like, this pile here is the checking account, this pile here is the savings account. I think it would be a wonderful message regarding their own conviction to like really go all in on Bitcoin. If you're sitting on a giant, 1.4 billion pile of cash, then you're short Bitcoin, you're long dollars. And I think that's a terrible look. I think the stronger position would be to take that, have it as your operating capital, your operating spending Bitcoin. That Bitcoin is a medium of exchange. It is a money. I guess that does kind of go counter to, sailors like, it doesn't compete with the dollar sort of standpoint.
Well, yes,
it's only you buy,
being
you
10
buy
miles
and
away from
hold it.
Langley. Yeah.
Yeah. That's right. Have your stack that is your buy and hold that you're never going to sell. And if you need to have some on hand to meet dividends or meet operating expenses or buy coffee and a nice lunch for all the staff, have your spending Bitcoin. It's like the institutional equivalent of a hot wallet. I just thought that this was a bad look. Right? Even if they necessarily did it, I guess you kind of like have to announce it publicly. But to me, this feels like a bad look. Like they're hedging their Bitcoin bets with cash. I'm not, so I'm not sure what the hell Sailor's doing here, but it at least shows weakness and fear to me. And I do think that is possible. Like to Joe's point, we could have another correction here, that there could be a little bit of market turmoil, but the liquidity taps are going to be turned on full blast. I mean, Trump's talking about stimmy checks from the tariffs, right?
Yeah.
I am in no way bearish on next year. I can't think of a bearish setup. I can think of short-term corrections because the market goes haywire because fiat is a terrible system. But this seems like a bad idea to me. But again, I'm not in there. I'm not trying to ask people for billions and billions of dollars to loan to me at low interest rates. So what the hell do I know? I just think, come on, be hardcore. Roll into Bitcoin.
Somebody in our chat, Maxwell's Equation, seems to share your sentiment on it. And Maxwell's Equations wrote, quote, it gets them into S&P 500 easier with Chuck E. Cheese fiat tokens.
Damn straight. You're just bending the knee to the fiat system. You're like, I'm glad, again, I go back and forth on Tether. Like, I usually just think of them as kind of fiat maxes, but every now and then I get this little glimmer of like, are you guys just trying to accelerate the downturn? Like, are you hardcore Bitcoiners as well? I don't know. I have no insider information, but I kind of go back and forth. But they're not, right? They're just basically saying, well, fuck you. We're going to have gold and Bitcoin. I don't care about your stupid rating system.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. I have nothing else. I can appreciate that. But there was more regarding Michael Saylor. In fact, we had Jim Cramer come out and talk about Michael Saylor. We had to talk about this one. We had to touch on this one. He is warning you that Michael Saylor is not to be trifled with. Let's see what he has to say, which, by the way, I don't want to make any accusations, but he always sounds just a little bit off to me. Let's have a listen.
I would say that this man is not to be trifled with. Saylor will come on Squawk. He'll come on everywhere. He'll come on every show. It wouldn't shock me. He pops up at the White House for all I know. He will do whatever's necessary. He is the Malcolm X of Bitcoin, okay? Malcolm X, right? Yes. By any means necessary, he will defeat the shorts. Defeat the shorts.
The Malcolm X of Bitcoin. Now, I appreciate his enthusiasm. I'm sad that he said favorable things about MSTR. I apologize to Michael Saylor and all the MSTR crowd. That's probably going to hurt. We got that inverse Kramer going on here. But what an unusual comparison to make. I'm not sure if he was just like watching, what is it? Who's in the movie? Was it Denzel Washington? I'm not sure. Like he was just
Denzel
recently watching the movie. Like
all praise be to Allah and the Honorable Satoshi Nakamoto.
Yeah, there you go. Like you could have gone like maybe like Leonidas 300. You could have gone with like Braveheart, right? That's a classic one. HODL, right? We're all here on that one. The Malcolm X comparison I thought was an unusual one, enough that it was worth highlighting. And we did also get some beautiful memes out of it as well. Where do I go? Oh, there we go, right here.
Chef's kiss.
Beautiful.
That was so good. If you are watching this and you don't know what that picture references, that's supposed to be actually a picture of Malcolm X, but apparently he's now white and also Michael Saylor. It's amazing.
It's a glorious photo. So I just had to highlight that one. It was too much fun. And speaking of things that are fun, I wanted to share this clip as well too. Now, see, we got CZ over at Binance hanging out with the good old forever perma bear, Peter Schiff, who, by the way, if you ask my opinion, and I know you didn't, but you might have, I'm not watching the chat at the moment. I think is totally full of shit and has Bitcoin. I think he is playing the heel. He's playing the heel for a long time. That guy has Bitcoin. If not, like, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. But here's a fun little moment. Like, I get this I get gold bugs ask me about Bitcoin all the time. And actually, I know a lot of gold bugs that have moved into Bitcoin. A lot of them still have both positions, and I can understand that. And you kind of allocate what's best for you. And we're gonna have different time horizons. We're gonna be different ages, different places in life. I don't begrudge anybody, but there are drawbacks to gold. Let's have a little watch here on this one.
It has some, I think it's Kyrgyz language. I took it back from Kyrgyzstan. He has a certificate. I got this from a very important person from Kyrgyzstan. Very recently, just completely by luck. So we take it out. It's pretty heavy. I'll put this down. You can see, like, it says Kyrgyzstan, 1,000 grams, fine gold, 99.9.9. And a serial number. Try it.
Yes. Yeah, it's heavy.
Is it real gold or no?
Well, I don't know. I mean, is this what you're trying to? I mean,
Has a
Verifying gold is actually quite difficult. I was talking to people earlier today about going across borders. Going across borders with gold is quite difficult. It's quite difficult.
It's super double plus difficult.
It's super double plus difficult for anyone that doesn't know. And again, if you want to learn these things, head to btcsessions.ca/learn. Check out the YouTube channel. You can verify and audit the Bitcoin supply and the Bitcoin that you have at any point in time. The entire supply. It's actually, I forget what the command is offhand, but it's basically one command line connected to your node, and it will tell you the current supply of Bitcoin. It is always verifiable by yourself on your own hardware. That is the power of Bitcoin. You can cross any border with it at any point in time. I believe NVK and Ben's interview from yesterday, again, great Why Are We Bullish, NVK and Ben talking a lot about like advanced tools and these sort of adversarial environments. You can memorize 12 words. You could use key teleport. You could use seed XOR. You can split that seed into two. I could put one seed phrase in Gary's pocket and one seed phrase in mine. And if anybody steals that one, it doesn't matter. They still don't have the entire stack. Plus we had a passphrase on top of it. Plus we did some other crazy shit. Who knows? But that is one of the major drawbacks. Whenever we talk to people about Bitcoin versus real estate, and by the way, we got an awesome interview with Steve Skretzky from the Looney Hour coming out next week, talking about Bitcoin and real estate because he's a realtor and he's a Bitcoiner as well. There's the tangible ends up being the drawback. And I thought that from CZ, for all the Binance bullshit and all the shitcoin casino stuff, I actually did appreciate this little moment here because he had him basically dead to rights. Is this gold, right? You cannot, it is very difficult to audit and to verify gold. It could be gold, but tungsten. Go ahead.
Nathan, this one it said 0.999 on the gold.
Yes, it absolutely said, but funny enough, even with the stamping and the serial number, Schiff was not going to say yes. He was not going to answer one way or the other because he knows, even being the big gold bug, the gold bull that he is, you can't know without doing some work, and it's not easy to do. That's why people like coins. That's why coins trade at a premium, because there's less less value in like throwing tungsten in those things, so they're generally a little bit better.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's the gold bars, right? You have the big bars, basically gold encased with tungsten. It's very difficult to actually audit that. But the coins, that's why they traded a bit of a premium, a little bit easier to audit, and you're less likely to have tungsten sitting in the middle of it.
Interesting. You're smart.
Right. I have my moments. Any thoughts on that? Gold, the markets, payroll looks like shit. Gary, you still got your made up job as an actor, I think.
Yeah, all my jobs are made up jobs, dude. I get paid to play pretend, and I get paid here to say things that I have no clue what I'm talking about. It's lovely.
And you do a fantastic job, and we love it. Well, guys, again, if you enjoy the content, please do hit the like button. It really does help out. And if you're new here, welcome to the channel. If you're new here, listen to me very closely. Learn self-custody. If you haven't already, you need to take Bitcoin in self-custody. Even just start with a mobile hot wallet. I love AQUA wallet. Blue wallet's great. The Bull wallet is phenomenal as well too. Try one of those out. Try moving some coins around. You've got to learn the self-custody tools. Why? Because when we get back, there is some more tyranny in the world. We got some tech updates for you that you need to hear, as well as there is some unfortunate authoritarianism going on around the world. And don't get me wrong, we'll touch on why Canada sucks, but it's actually not the worst one today. There is another Commonwealth country that is going down the authoritarian rabbit hole, and we're going to find out all about it when we get back from the break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Looking for a simple and secure way to manage your Bitcoin on mobile? AQUA Wallet has you covered. It's user-friendly and puts you in full control of your Bitcoin with secure self-custody. AQUA also supports Lightning and Liquid Network, making fast, cheap Bitcoin payments and asset transfers easier than ever. Plus, it even supports stablecoins, giving you ultimate flexibility. Built on open source code, AQUA is transparent, trustworthy, and perfect for beginner and pros alike. Ready to upgrade your Bitcoin experience? Click the link in the show notes or scan the QR code on the screen now to download AQUA Wallet today. Securing your Bitcoin doesn't have to be complicated or invasive. With NUNCHUK's HONEYBADGER plan, you get state-of-the-art multisig with built-in inheritance planning and no KYC required. NUNCHUK is trusted by users to secure billions of dollars in Bitcoin. The HONEYBADGER plan offers 204 assisted multisig, guiding you step-by-step on mobile or desktop. It works seamlessly with hardware wallets like TapSigner, Coldcard, Jade, and plenty of others, so you're always in control. Plus, with non-KYC inheritance planning, you can ensure your Bitcoin goes to your loved ones. No private info needed. Take control of your Bitcoin today. Click the link in the show notes or scan the QR code on the screen to check out the HONEYBADGER plan.
All right. We are back in. Gary, before I pull up the next story, I just want to point out that while we're on that sponsor break right there, I saw the greatest comment in the chat as I was just scrolling by nice and quick there. It was Gary's mustache for president, and I couldn't agree more. Gary's mustache 2028, that's who I'm voting for. That should be the head of the Libertarian Party.
I would vote for any mustache over any of the major party candidates. I would vote for the mustache on that lady that Tucker interviewed over any of the major party candidates. So, yeah. Mustaches or anything. That's great.
That's a wonderful thing. And now we're going to take a complete 180 in terms of sentiment and go to the totalitarian state, the police state that is the UK, and what horrible things are coming out of the UK that, again, Bitcoiners over there, self-custody, you must learn the privacy tools, and it's worth learning the privacy communications, VPNs, things like that as well, too. You got to be on the defensive here. I know that we talked about it last week, that chat control has been basically pushed back for the time being, where they're not going to be going through all your encrypted messages and sending through an AI and then running that to the police. But, of course, the politicians and police are off the hook so that they can save the children or protect the children. But
some are more equal than others.
Some are more equal than others. That's right. We all live on a farm. Now, responding to Elon Musk, the UK is a police state. Gary, would you like to read this one for me? Could you do an accent with your acting?
We need your acting, Gary. I'm going to end up sounding like a chimney sweep if I try to do it. I think that just because we've criminalized speech, logged known 8 crime incidents, rolled out mass surveillance, expanded the Investigatory Powers Act, added facial recognition, censored the internet, eroded away jury trials, tried a bit of pre-crime policing, cracked down on protests, toughened the Public Order Act, pushed digital ID, centralized identity systems, let Quagons run government, politicized policing, and quietly sidelined democratic oversight, that we're living in a police state. Calm down, mate. Government is keeping us safe from ourselves. Peter McCormick, that was not Peter McCormick. That was actually me. You're welcome.
Surprise! No one could possibly tell that wasn't actually Peter McCormick. And there's some comments too, like, don't forget canceling elections to save us from voting wrong and harming ourselves. Don't forget you can't possibly even defend yourselves. Like, the UK has gone absolutely mad, and I don't get how, like, I get it. You have family, you have a long history there, but man, it feels like you got to get out for a little bit, maybe go sit somewhere else, because it is getting insane. Additionally, we had a few more, and this one was crazy as well. Just highlighting one of the things he talked about. Jury trials in England and Wales could be scrapped, except in the most serious cases, under government plans seen by the BBC. That's right. You cannot have jury nullification. You can't have a jury by your peers. The never ideologically motivated or corrupt people that made it into the positions of power, sitting as a judge, are going to be the sole arbiter of your outcome, of whether or not you perhaps violated the state or did something that was like, you have the government judging whether or not you've done something wrong, potentially against the government, or judging government versus you. And also, if I'm not mistaken too, they are supposed to just execute they're not supposed to interpret the law necessarily, is just like execute on the law. They're not supposed to like legislate from the bench. So if there's some totalitarian regulation that comes into place, they're just supposed to follow it, even if they didn't maybe have a difference of opinion about it. You don't have the possibility of having empathy from your peers, because they just know best. Look at those wigs, Gary. They must know exactly what they're talking about, and they'll
Damn
decide.
fine wig.
Yeah, they will decide your fate. They couldn't ever possibly corrupt it. If you said mean things on Facebook or Twitter, they're going to read them and they're going to lock you away.
See, England, that's why we stuck that whole trial by jury thing in the Constitution. So, and because it's in the Constitution, there's no way anybody here could ever change that or ignore it. By the way, let me just say, I'm sure anybody watching this did not understand a word I said on Peter McCormick's tweet. It was a fantastic tweet. If you didn't understand what I said, and I assume you didn't because of the horrible accent, go back and check it out. It's a really well done tweet.
100%. If you hated Gary's terrible accent, hit the like button. If you like to hit the like button, that's always the way that we have a free and fair election on whether or not Gary did a good job here.
Your choice is fish. Continue.
Exactly. Continuing on in the lunacy that is the UK totalitarianism, we have here, reposted by good old Giacomo Zucco here. V for Vendetta was not optimistic enough about the UK. Isn't that a sad state of affairs? Man was arrested by police in Britain after he posted a picture online of himself with a gun in the US. When he was held overnight in a cell and bailed. So let me just get this through here. Like, it is a UK man who's visiting friends in the UK and posts a picture with, it's a shotgun too.
Visiting friends in the US.
In the US, he's in the US where he could legally touch the guns because UK has the worst self-defense and gun laws possible. I think even worse than Canada. So he's playing around, he's celebrating, he's doing, celebrating 2A while he's hanging out here. And he posts a picture of himself. IT consultant arrested after after posing with gun on LinkedIn. John French name Booth, I apologize. Richelieu.
You're welcome.
Yep. Yeah. Booth says that he was put through 13 weeks of hell after returning from U.S. holidays. Even look at the way this man is holding the gun.
He clearly could not do anything with it, even if he wanted to.
He's just out having fun. Like, he's just probably got birdshot in there. He's just doing some skeet shooting. He's trying to knock a duck off the pond. Like, let the man have fun. Like, that was my childhood, was shooting random vermin and targets. Like, absolutely ridiculous that it's gone to this state. And a wonderful teammate on the show, Matt behind the scenes here, was pointing out to us that it really feels like the UK is a test ground for what they can necessarily get away with, because it doesn't have the Constitution necessarily enshrined kind of legal rights. Again, it's all just words on paper. Ultimately, it has to be enforced, but there is that precedent in the US. There is that culture of there as well too. But because there's such a disarmed population, they're talking about taking the tips off of knives because they're pointy and they stab people, Gary. Because it turns out people will always be violent.
No, people are going to do what people do. I heard something recently, and I think I'd heard it before, that the UK has more cameras per person than China. Like, that's insane. And I heard it on a podcast, so it's definitely true.
No, it's I can even tell you, I'm not sure, they have the whole CCTV setup. So there was a ton of video footage. Plus they have a very elaborate parking system as well too. I know, because part of that tech was imported into Calgary here. So they've got a shit ton of cameras for parking enforcement combined with CCTV. So there is a ton of cameras out through the major metropolitan areas. I just had to read this quote here. I was told to be careful what I say online, and I need to understand how it makes people feel. We are arresting people for posting guns online. He's at a pond because it makes people feel uncomfortable. Let me say, it's like the totalitarian feminization of the population is unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Cut to 2026, British man arrested for considering the possibility of imagining himself posting a picture with a gun.
It's going to be things like, did you have mean thoughts about that person? Well, yeah. He kicked me and I dreamt about just pushing him down. Oh yeah, that's 10 weeks in the gulag for you. My God. Get out. Maybe get out. All right. Continuing on. Let's not forget, there's a little bit this week. There's always going to be a little bit because they never let us down. Continuing with our wonderful Canada Sucks section. Friend of the show, Steve Saretsky, podcast coming out with him next week. Household consumption in Canada fell by 0.4% in Q3, the worst quarterly performance since the pandemic. Yeah, things in Canada are not looking great. Now, don't get me wrong. If you post a picture hunting or with a gun, you're not going to get arrested at this point, but I'm not so sure that's not down the horizon. Any takes or thoughts on this, Gary?
I don't know enough about Canada. I assume that means you're having maple syrup again with your pancakes. I don't know. But I'll leave it to you.
Say what you will, it's it's basically controlled by like it's like a monopoly mob organization of maple syrup. They have maple syrup reserves. I'm not even kidding. They have maple syrup reserves, but it is good with pancakes and bacon. I'm not going to fault you there. But we had some good news coming out of Alberta specifically. I want to highlight this one. So we had a gentleman that was going around with a petition that was Alberta and Canada forever. Basically, was trying to counter the growing and strengthening Alberta independence movement, which it is growing and strengthening. And so he put out a petition saying, quote, "Do you agree that Alberta should remain in Canada?" And ultimately, he got all the signatures he needed to make it a referendum issue. Now, his idea was to basically stop Alberta's separation in its tracks. And it appears like he has accidentally triggered a referendum because essentially a no response is a referendum question. So in trying to stop Alberta independence, he may have forced this question onto the ballot, I believe, in 2027. Now, I always hear people talk about like Alberta independence. It would be nice. It's never going to happen. They got a whole bunch of issues about the logistics of executing on it, which I think is completely obfuscating the point, right? Gary, if you're in a terrible abusive relationship, you don't have to necessarily know where you're going to go next to know to get out. No relationship is better than a bad one. And we have a terribly abusive, manipulative, long-standing relationship with the federal government, with the rest of Canada. And so I say, sir, we're out. We're done. I'd rather be single than be with that fucker. Sure, I'm going to swear a little bit. Apologies for that.
Are you sure? Maybe just make Canada so angry sometimes, and Canada just can't help itself. I don't know.
Are you saying that Alberta had it coming? We're going to pay for it.
I saw how Alberta was dressed. I'm just, just saying.
Like a badass cowboy. That's what it was. Now, I wanted to highlight this because as we're sharing, I'll just play a little bit of it here. Because again, I know for the American listeners here, we're so glad to have you. And please, American listeners, push the Alberta sovereignty for me. Get that on social media every now and then. Tell your Canadian friends. We're going to meme this into existence. We're going to make sure that it happens. And hey, make us a good offer. We come to join you. We give you direct access all the way to Alaska. It could be a great trade. We got a ton of oil. I think we got more oil than Venezuela. I'm not sure, but we're up there, right? We didn't even talk about that. We'll talk about that maybe next week. We'll see how things develop. If you haven't paid attention to it, the U.S. seems to be going to war with Venezuela. At least they have that kind of on the table. I wonder if it has something to do with the plethora of oil that they have in Venezuela. America, don't. That would be terrible. It'll be awful. Don't invade Venezuela. Invade Alberta. We won't fight you. Send one tank over the border. Send one guy who has a nice gun. We'll wave the white flag. We got the best oil that you could ever want. We would love to have you here. I mean, we'll totally surrender. It will be fought. It'll be hard. You wouldn't have a lot of people necessarily signing up. But quick highlight here. They booed the federal government, but they gave a standing ovation when the gentleman there came up and asked a question about Alberta independence. And just for context, that is the ruling party's meeting for Alberta. And when they talked about the federal government, they were getting booed. When they talked about independence at the AGM for the United Conservative Party, they were getting a standing ovation. Wanted to highlight that. It's a bit of a win for me. So you can
Nathan,
celebrate with me.
I got a question for you. And if you don't have an answer, that's fine. If Alberta had a George Washington fighting for Alberta independence, who would it be?
Oh man, it would probably be Ralph Klein, which is going to be an obscure throwback. He's unfortunately dead now, but he was like one of the greatest premiers we ever had. We had a surplus. He gave the money back. He was a drunk, but he was like a functioning alcoholic, but he was just a bro. Like he was just a guy. And he actually did a decent, comparatively, he did an amazing job. I'm sure we'd have like a Mount Rushmore in the Rockies with Ralph Klein giving our money back and drinking a beer down at the old King Henry. He was a character, and like the 90s was huge prosperity for Alberta. So throw him up there.
All right.
I'm going to work hard. I'll get my face on there. You'll see, I'll get a mountain. That's not ego at all. But enough with the one stuff. So we had bad UK. We had some bad news about Canada. It's good news about Alberta. But we have some other unfortunate news that you point out to me, Gary, that I want to highlight here. Speaking of totalitarian clampdown. So, Gary, can you take me through a little bit of what we're seeing here with regards to the Clarity Act?
Yeah, so the talk about the Clarity Act, this bill that's supposed to pass, I don't know, the House and the Senate. And the Senate is called something different. But I think it just passed the House recently, and they're taking it up in the Senate. Don't take my word for it, though. It's been 15 years since I worked on Capitol Hill. But the talk is that there could be, or potentially language inserted into it where the government would say, all right, we're not going to persecute money people from being money transactors, if they're not actually handling the money, they're just providing a service that allows one person to pass it to another, which of course is Samurai Wallet's whole defense. It's like, hey, we're not actually managing the money here. We're just offering the service where people can trade and send to each other. They'll say, okay, well, if we put this language in it, we straighten it all out. Anybody who we tried to stick in jail before, they're off the hook because now we're changing the law, except for the Samurai Wallet people, because they accepted a plea agreement. So even changing the language in the law would not apply to them, which really sucks. So I know there's a petition going around, try to get these guys out. Yeah, please sign if you can. I even donated a few sats, whatever little it's going to do.
Yep, 100%. Unfortunately, with the Clarity Act, it would mean for like the tornado case that he's probably off the hook. But because the plea deal, Samurai guys can't. So guys, I know I tell you a lot. Go to like btcsessions.ca/learn. Do the self-custody thing. If you do one thing today after listening to the stream, go find it's the change.org /p/stand up for freedom. Pardon the innocent coders jailed for building privacy tools. Find that one there on change.org. Sign the petition to get the pardon for the Samurai developers that are currently sitting in prison and will be for the next few years just for writing open source code, never touching anybody's money. I think it's a travesty that these guys are still there, and it's the least that we can do for the guys that are risking things in order to build tech to provide these privacy tools to us. I think it's that important as a community that we actually stand up for this sort of thing. We let it be known that it is an issue for us. Don't forget, we got Ross out. There is going to be more prisoners of like the Bitcoin war here at some point in time, these guys included. We should do everything we can to funnel energy towards that, get our basically almost like our POWs back, right? They have no business being in prison, particularly if the Clarity Act passes, where it's only because they couldn't hold on any longer, which I do not begrudge them. I can't imagine what that's like being locked up for that long and have it hanging over your head like a sword of Damocles. So it takes 2 seconds, sign the petition. If there's one thing that you do today, let's at least voice that we want these guys out. I think that's a meaningful thing to do. Gary?
No, I'm with you, Nathan. We a lot of the shows we do is, number go up and Bitcoin's going to, make us rich. We're all going to have girlfriends. Great. Nothing wrong with that at all. But at least it's just speaking for myself, and I think for you as well, to some degree, I think maybe even full degree, we're in this not just for number go up. We are in this for freedom. We're in this to kind of take power away from the state to at least some degree, lessen the state's power control over us. And we have to help the people who are trying to help us do that. And even if they're in it just to make their own bank, whatever, they're producing a product that helps us take control away from the state. So please support these guys. And I think we are moving into the, first they ignore us, then they make fun of us, and now they fight us, period. So there will be others. There is way too much. There are way too many people who have way too much invested in the old fiat system to just let it go willingly. There will be a fight. Bigger fights are coming. So I'm not saying sacrifice your whole stack, but if you can send a few sats their way and help get this petition going around, I think that'd be a cool thing to do. That's just me.
No, 100%. I agree. I do think that things will get worse before they get better at some point in time. Maybe it's not everywhere in the world. It could be different jurisdictions. Like some countries really clamp down, like the UK, and maybe the US does go in a better direction. Maybe Joe's right. We get the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve. We get the buy-in. Maybe these guys do get the pardon if we can draw enough attention to it, because it requires attention. But we should be prepared for things to get a lot worse. Even on that note, like spoiler alert, we had a conversation just about a week and change ago, our interview with Dr. Jack Cruz, which was a phenomenal conversation. And he very much thinks that post midterms or around midterms, there's going to be kind of a change of pace. So the kumbaya moment is going to be up and the state is going to be coming after Bitcoiners. And I largely agree. And even just to follow that up and dive in deeper, I think some of that sentiment is shared by Simon Dixon. So next week, I will be recording a podcast with Simon Dixon and Jack Cruz. And I do think that is a lot of their message, is that like fight is not over. We are here for freedom and we've got our work to do. We've got our work cut out. And this is just the beginning. This is the smallest thing that you can do today. I think it's absolutely worth it.
Yeah, man.
Continue on. We got some tech updates for you, some important stuff to bring to your attention. You guys want to make sure you see this if you are using these tools, because they will impact you. We've got AQUA Wallet. Bad news. Dolphin Card got pulled down offline. So unfortunately, Dolphin Card is no longer available. It did seem like, I think they're working very hard, I know, in the background to try and bring this back. It was whatever the kind of like fiat provider was to link these two together.
Yeah.
Out, which again is like, it's a non-KYC credit card directly topped up from Bitcoin.
And you were pushing this to me for a while, and I was just on the verge of finally signing up for it when they did this. I was like, oh, damn it.
I definitely, being in Canada, you're not allowed to use the Dolphin card, so I definitely never used the Dolphin card in Canada.
Never.
But hypothetically, if I did use the Dolphin card outside of Canada, it was absolutely phenomenal. Not that I ever used it inside of Canada. Outside of Canada, the Dolphin card was amazing. It was super helpful. It was a wonderful product, and it worked really well. So I was disappointed to see this happening. Very, happy it happened, happy that it happened, not sad that it's gone. And I'm optimistic that we'll get it back. So if you are a Dolphin card user, just look for that email. They're going to have instructions about how to basically request any funds that are left on the card coming back to you. And they are work on getting it spun up again. However, they do get it spun up again, you will have a new card number. If you had any pending refunds, just make sure you let the people know that they have to send it to a different card now. So no longer works, down for the time being. Maybe it was too good to be true, but I think they're fighting hard to bring it back because it was a pretty cool offering. In more interesting positive tech news, we've got update from Francis Pouliot over at Bull Bitcoin. Bull 6.4.0 has been released. I think the coolest upgrade here is that you have Tor Proxy connect to your own Electrum server. So you can connect your Bull app to your own node, which is wonderful. Ben did do a full tutorial on the Bull app. It is a whopping 90 minutes. It's basically a modern day full length movie. They're adding more support for more hardware wallets. I know that's coming out. I've seen the names on the back end in the developer mode. There's improvements to sync as well as the recoverable system. And you can, one of my favorite things, let me just pull it up here. I think Cold Card still has the Black Friday sale going on, but if not, there's the QR code for Cold Card 5% off. But you can pair this with your Cold Card. And so what I absolutely love about it is because beforehand I was going through like NUNCHUK to AQUA or from Sparrow to AQUA.
Yeah.
Like I was kind of bouncing around to go from Cold Card to Lightning and Liquid. And it's nice that with Bull Bitcoin, especially if you can access the exchange here in Canada or South America or Europe, I think they're planning to expand to a lot of places, but I could go directly from my Cold Card directly to Lightning. Very easy, all in one place. It's wonderful in that sense, and I've even been able to pay like credit card bills and stuff with it. So if you haven't checked out the Bull Wallet, Bull app, it is very cool. Big fan of it. Nice to see that you connect your own node there as well too. Continuing on, I did want to highlight this one. Gary, you remember this? Look at this. Check this out, guys. Hang on, I'm gonna turn the sound on that. Go away sound here. It's Lamborghini and Ledger. I feel like they really know their audience here. It's the fanciest hardware wallet. Now we have Lamborghini teaming up with Ledger. I have my rules about hardware wallets that I'm willing to recommend. Ledger does not meet that criteria. If you have one, I don't think they're necessarily at immediate risk. It just doesn't meet the criteria that I am comfortable with recommending. But I thought that this was absolutely ridiculous. Gary, any thoughts?
I mean, on the one hand, Ledger, they did get hacked, so a lot of the addresses of their customers got released. They do offer this optional idea where you can store your private key in the cloud. They do not have an open source software that you interact with. It's all proprietary. So like that's the downside. On the plus side, they do have this kind of cool Lamborghini logo on it now. So I don't know. I might have to go back to a Ledger.
Oh, yeah. Apparently, I've also had a number of clients where the screen's burnt out, so you can't even see the pin that you're entering. You don't have a full keyboard. It supports a whole bunch of shitcoins. There's no Bitcoin-only firmware. It's not air-gapped. I have my issues. Again, that's my personal opinion and preference. I don't think your funds are immediately at risk if you're in a Ledger. I just think there are better products out there.
Yes, and to be very clear, I agree with you 100%. I don't think you're in immediate danger. I'm not trying to completely badmouth Ledger here. It's certainly having your Bitcoin in self-custody, if you're going to use Ledger, at least for the time being, probably better than leaving it on an exchange. But still, I think there are personally better options out there than Ledger. So I'll leave it at that.
And Ledger with Lamborghini, like shout out to Rob Wallace from Bitcoin News, which by the way, we use a lot of his links from here and there. He's a wonderful source of information, but I just couldn't help but picture like the Bit Boy on the Lamborghini and the mugshot. I just don't think it's necessarily the branding or the image that you want to go for, but hey, it's just not for me. I'm more of a Toyota guy if I had the funds to spend.
Oh, wait, hang on. We got somebody here who corrected me. One of our people here, the software to interact with Ledger is 100% open source. So that could be a mistake for me. I thought it was not, But we'll
I believe the device the last time I looked is about 95% open source. You have the secure element side that's closed source, but I think there's a little bit more beyond that. So it's close, but it's not fully open source. A lot of it is open source, but it's kind of like a redacted document. It's usually the stuff under the black line that I want to see. Again, I don't think it's necessarily that you're a position at risk. I have more concerns with the shitcoin. I don't like Ledger Live. If you're using Ledger, switch to using Sparrow. You only need Ledger Live for initializing it and for firmware updates, as if I remember correctly. But I think there just are better products out there.
Totally fair. So Rylan Stunts 5093, thank you for correcting me. I was under the impression that it was mostly proprietary. So
correct. It's like 95%.
Okay, so anytime we say something on here, if you think we got something wrong, Nathan doesn't get stuff wrong. If you think I got something wrong, call me out. You know, it's nice of you to say, Nathan. You're really smart. So cool. Appreciate it. Thank you, Rylan Stunts 5093.
No, 100%. We will never lie. We could be wrong at times. We will never lie to you. Sometimes we get bad information, or we make a mistake, and we make like that right there. It's not completely closed source. It's mostly open source. But I'm always concerned about the parts that aren't necessarily open source. But we want to be accurate. We want you guys to have the best information. We want you to act on the best information. So we're going to do the best we can with what we got. We're going to make mistakes. We're only human. Gary, was there anything else that you want to round out today here with?
No, I'm good. I think we had a nice fun time. Ryland followed up. He said, I use Nunchuk with Miniscript to time lock my BTC. So that's a fun
great idea.
Yep.
Yep. No, Miniscript and Nunchuk is fantastic. I think Liana Wallet's got Miniscript as well too. It's definitely a place that I've slept on a little bit. I need to spend some more time on Miniscript. I just got so comfortable with the tools that I'm using that I haven't really felt the need to explore and use a little bit more. But the idea of having like a decaying multi-sig where it ends up with a single sig at the end, that could be really useful, right? That does have its place. It does have its purpose. It is then all on chain. And time locks, man, I'm so nervous to use time locks, but it's another cool one as well too. I'd hate to get that information wrong. And it's like, all right, we'll see you in 100 years.
Yeah.
I'm sure I wouldn't, but it's still just like, I still want my liquidity apparently too. Well, guys, thank you so much for hanging there. Again, we got BTC Sessions.ca/learn, QR code on the screen here. This has been a wonderful episode. Shout out to Joe Consorti again for coming on, giving us that wonderful market update. I am Nathan with the BTC Sessions. This is one of my wonderful co-host Gary with the BTC Sessions, and we will see you later.
See y'all.
Hey, you. Yes, you watching the Bitcoin price movements and the latest exciting news. It's awesome to stay informed, but the real power of Bitcoin comes from taking control. Don't just watch, take action. Head over to btcsessions.ca/learn for free step-by-step tutorials that guide you through every major skill you need to know, plus full video playlists for deeper dives on any topic you like. And if you're ready for the ultimate fast track, scroll to the bottom and check out bitcoinmentor.io for premium one-on-one experience with my team of Bitcoin experts to ensure you get it right the first time. Don't wait. Secure your Bitcoin future today. Hit the link in the show notes or scan the QR code on the screen.